we're going to have this panel in English, otherwise it gets pretty messy. It's a pleasure for me to be here. It's something that I think just wouldn't be possible 5 or 6 years ago, so I'm pretty happy that we gather almost 1,000 people here. And it's also a pleasure for me to be here with Samir, who I got the chance to meet a few months ago, right? We got introduced, and every time that I speak with him, I learned so much from him. And also, he's a pretty humble guy, as you guys probably noticed. And also, his wife is from Gujarat, a state where I lived in India. So I know that they're pretty nice people, and I cannot invite them to a barbecue party, right? So the idea here is for us to talk about a little bit about inbound marketing and the intersection with growth hacking. And I think we can just get started by doing that. Like, let's get to the basics. What do you think, what's the definition of inbound marketing for you, Samir? And how does it overlap with growth hacking in any sense? Because I think these definitions are pretty blurred sometimes. So people constantly ask me, so is email marketing inbound? Is PPC inbound, because you have to pay to get traffic? And is inbound part of growth hacking, or is it the other way around? So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think the way to kind of strategically think about it is, there is strategy and then there is tactics, right? So like, let's say, so strategy would be more like 2 or 3 or 4 year plan in the context of your sales goals or revenue goals, right? Or whatever your goals are for your company, right? And tactics would be something that I need to do right now, right? Like, so for example, for my company, the long-term strategy is to be like a McKinsey for growth, right? Work for a lot of big companies, lot of work for startups, and become like the authority on growth hacking like in the next 5 years, right? But in the short term, I have to write a LinkedIn script, So like I have to do something that's practical, that moves me towards that, right? Towards that goal. So in terms of your question, like choosing what to do and when is like super important. It'll be like a mix of things that you do, right? But you can look at like all your potential marketing channels, and I have a tool where you can rank the risk of each one, and then you can, depending on your short and long-term plans, you can start knocking them off, depending on the resources you have. You may have to do some time paid, you have to do some time, right? Some time unpaid. But I think that what to keep in mind, like in the back of your mind, is that you need people who understand this stuff and who are fast and who are entrepreneurial. And maybe earlier there were people who were that in marketing also. It's not like growth hacking changed everything, but it gives you a mindset to work off of, right? I think that like, because, okay, content marketer right now is interested, like my content marketer would write great content, right? And it's more of a traditional mindset. They know a little about distribution, but I am the growth content hacker, right? Like I am thinking of bottom line numbers. Like, are we getting these many shares? What is my virality coefficient for this particular thing? Like, are we reaching the right audience? How fast are we reaching? So I am putting the growth hacker hat on, where my content director is just busy enough to manage writers and all this stuff. So I think it's bringing like a more data-driven and results-driven targets to the process.
Like growth hacking is like an approach to driving results, of whether if you have different tactics, and inbound can be one of those, and content creation as well. So it's more like a growth mindset for everything that you do in terms of marketing, right? Which is very different from what most companies used to do in marketing back then, that they used to think about branding, all that kind of stuff that's more obscure, I would say.
Yeah, because right now, like earlier people used to write content and then think about distribution, right? Like, okay, where am I going to go? But now we are thinking, like in BuzzSumo, we saw I'm looking at what content is being shared the most first and at what avenues. And then I'm doing my content writing strategy. So I'm looking at numbers first. So I think earlier it wasn't that. And I'm also trying to figure out, okay, even in those numbers, where's my niche, right? So I have to be a brand marketeer. I have to know enough about positioning. I have to know about branding. I have to know about my customers. I have to know about my competition. So there's a lot going in the mix before you start getting content or even write ads, right? So I think that's the main difference I see.
Okay. And a lot of people, they basically, they equal inbound marketing with content marketing, which for me at least, inbound is a little more than that. But
right.
Would you say that content marketing is a big strategy for most of the companies now, or what kind of companies are not very suitable for content marketing?
Oh, I don't think there's any company in the world who's not suitable for content marketing. I mean, maybe WhatsApp.
Yeah.
But I think it's every company needs to be doing.
That's the kind of example that I get sometimes, you know, when I talk to people who say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And then WhatsApp doesn't do it. Like Evernote doesn't do it. Dropbox doesn't do it. So to put it in another way, how often do you think that these things happen, like, but the entrepreneurs are able to create a product that has a viral loop on itself and they don't need anything else in terms of customer acquisition?
So I think you should try to run all the experiments, right, in parallel and see. Like if you find a model like Dropbox, like, I mean, it's great. I mean, you're a billionaire and you're done. But, and you should continuously experiment for that. So it's not like it wouldn't happen. But don't be unrealistic about it, I think, right? Like when you're trying all these channels, like inbound content marketing out, it's working already for so many companies and it's working at scale, right? If you look at HubSpot's margins, you know, your own growth, like, I mean, it has to be working for customers, for you to grow, and for HubSpot to grow, right? Because it's not the technology, it's that their clients are making revenue also, right? Like that's why it's growing. And I think the other thing is, even Google is thinking, when you create an ad in AdWords, it's telling you to think about your ad as useful information. So they're saying, don't pitch your product in the ad. Like product, your ad is useful information. So just like when you trust an organic result in Google, right? When you search for something, you click on it and go there. They want you to have the same effect on the ad. Like they want you to provide something useful, right? And I think the idea is same thing on content marketing, right? Like if you provide something useful, if you provide something relevant, if you get it to the right people at the right time, in the right place, they will do business with you, right? Because I think the other thing happening with all of us is we're all frazzled, right? Like there's WhatsApp running, there's Google Plus running, there's your wife calling from home, there are your kids calling, there's like 50 browser windows we have open. We don't have time, right? Like to be sold to, right? So that's changed. Like earlier, you know, sales, like people used to have large sales forces and call everybody, like, and nobody's picking up the phones anymore, right? Like, they're like, who the hell are you? Like, I want to know you. If Samir Patel calls you, right, after this meeting, I have a better chance that you'll talk to me. But if I'm some guy from the valley, like, pinging you on LinkedIn, you'll be like, what the hell, I don't have time, right? Like, so it's similar, right? I'm sharing something that's useful, hopefully. So I think it's just an electronic way to build trust, right? So I think building trust, you know, creating and teaching and educating the customer is a huge part of it.
Yeah, it could be a great hack, just like the pay with a tweet scheme. You use content behind the pay with a tweet scheme, you know, so it can be a great hack to distribute content as well.
Yeah.
And Facebook ads is going the same route too. If your ad is not relevant to the audience, it's not going to show up in front of them, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, one thing I wanted to add is, I think the investment is in content, I think gives you the most payback ever, more than ads, because the Google AdWords auctions and Facebook auctions are getting inflated, right? Like, When I started Searchforce back in 2004, Google was making 200 million in revenue, right? This year they're making 50 plus billion, and they're optimizing the auction so much, so it's so expensive, and you have to be so competitive to be able to do business there. So, and when you create content, you can repurpose it, right? You can repurpose it for a blog, ebook, a PowerPoint, an audio podcast. So I think the returns on the content are much, much higher, like over time, right?
More sustainable as well.
Sorry?
More sustainable as well. You don't have to pay like every time you want to show up in the search result if you have a good positioning.
Yeah. And you're forced to be in the mindset of helping people as opposed to like pitching and selling, right?
Okay.
Like you're forced because now you have to write something that's unique, it's useful to the target audience, and that it will be shared. So you're forced to think about how unique you are. So it helps you. Yeah.
Great. So you're a mentor of 500 startups. You advise a lot of startups who are getting started, and usually when you come to them to say, okay, you should do some content marketing, but we know that it takes a long time to pay off, sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's usually also a good idea to invest a little bit in paid media, especially in the beginning. So how do you balance that? How do you advise startups to balance that in the beginning? And more especially, how do you advise them to use paid media to know what kind of content is going to work so they can produce that and scale?
Paid media, okay. So I think the answer to the first question is, like I said, you create content, it's going to be repurposed, right? You can repurpose it for so many things. So it's going to pay off in some way. Let's say if you think you'll get 0 leads for your content, right? 0 leads. It's still useful to talk to, using that to talk to your existing customers, right? So with my new company, I'm not betting on content to give me sales, like directly as much, but my existing customers will only stay with me if they know I'm on top of growth, I'm top of all the channels, I'm top of analytics. So, I'm blogging a lot, I'm giving workshops a lot, I'm educating my current clients, because current clients, revenue from current clients is like 20 times, 30 times more easier than old clients. So if nothing else pays off, like, that's a big thing that you can get paid off. And for the paid channels, you want to do small methodical experiments and scale up as, as things go by, because that's the beautiful part about paid marketing is you can measure each and every dollar, like, and maybe even each and every cent, and you can tweak it, you can test something, learn, tweak, test something, learn, tweak really fast, and you can just shut it off if it doesn't work, right? So I think that's the beautiful part, and you can scale it if you need to. But I think I would do it, I would just make sure that all these like AdWords or Facebook ads make it very easy for you to start an ad, but it's very easy to lose money, but very hard to make money, because think about you trading in the stock market, right? You have no idea about math, statistics, you don't have a trading engine, and all these big hedge funds and big banks are using PhDs and statisticians to be able to work the market, right? So it's very similar also, these auctions. So I think you just want to make sure you have the right team and you're giving it the best shot, because you might do it and even pay it and think like, oh, it's not working, but I mean, you're not an expert, so, obviously, so I think that's the...
Yeah, content can work for some other things too. And I will also say that paid media can give you a head start on what's going to work in terms of conversion and conversion like throughout the funnel.
It's fast.
So yeah,
it's faster than content for sure. It's instant.
You can maybe test with paid media and then just line up tons of content that you want to produce to have this long-term asset for your brand.
Yeah, and I mean for smaller companies who are growing, they can handle all the business they can get from content, paid, everything, right? So it's a matter of you knowing your true metrics, like your lifetime value, your recurring revenue, your margins. If you are a SaaS company, you have to benchmark against, yourself against, CAC and LTV and all these metrics around the world and see how you're performing against the rest of the market. And if you're doing well, and even if it's a small portion of your, like 5% of your business is just content, or 10% is only Google AdWords, it's still worth it because it will grow.
Yeah. So can you go a little bit deeper into the process part of your framework? So how do a growth hacker, let's say any team, any startup team, so I'm in charge of growth hacking, how do I go about like planning my day? How do I spend my day like thinking about strategy, tactics, operational stuff, like trying new things? How much time should I put into trying new things versus just doubling down on what's working? So how do you advise people on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think everybody should have a growth plan, which means like for the next at least 2 to 3 quarters, you should know everything that you're running, and it should be risk adjusted, right? Like, so, you ask the CEO or whoever is in charge of revenue, hey, what do you need and how much risk are you willing to take to get to this, right? And then you come up with a growth plan that's strategic for all the channels, and then you prioritize by risk, right? So you start with the lowest risk. Like lowest risk would be, for example, would be, oh, I want to target, for let's say your company, right? You want to target people who are trying to learn content marketing on online advertising, or you want CMOs who are watching this kind of a video, right? So it's a very, very specific, audience within AdWords, within YouTube, right? So that would be like the least risk, let's say, and you move towards the most risk, which is the search marketing keywords, which are $3, $5, $10, $15, right, everywhere. So yeah, so like you're combining the risk, strategy, tactical, and that growth plan, and then it comes down to who's going to do what, right? Like what's your team look like, right? So your team should involve, so there should be a growth person who's in charge of growth, because then you're not just doing projects, but you're delivering revenue, right? Because that's what it means if you're a growth person. And then you have a UX person with you in the team. You have you have your data analysis person who's a data ninja. You have a channel expert, so you have an AdWords expert, Facebook expert, analytics expert, or whether it's Mixpanel or Google or whatever, right? And so you have kind of experts, so one growth person managing all these people to fit them together towards a goal. And each of them, Google uses this process called OKR, which we use also, which I talked about in your conference. Objective key results, it's called OKR. Basically, you're setting up goals for every person, right? So the UX person has to move something, like, maybe the bounce rate has to change, right, for the UX person. Like they have to improve, reduce the bounce rate or something. So everybody has 3 or 4 metrics every quarter that most important to least important, KR1, KR2, KR3 that they need to hit. That way you give your growth manager maybe a high level goal. So basically everybody's working towards a OKR. Okay,
but let's say that we're starting, okay, and we're experimenting with different things, and we tried out 5 things, and we see that this one thing here is working. So basically, what do you recommend for the team? Just like double down and saturate that channel as fast as you can, or try to find another channel to balance and try to grow like a little bit of each channel?
Yeah. So, sorry, you asked the question again. I forgot to answer first time. So what do we do for clients? We call this tinkering budget and a experimental backlog. So we have a certain amount of budget. So we allocate 10 to 20% to experiments. And that doesn't skew your main performance. So your team doesn't feel pressured. It's like 3M having an innovation team, creative team, who is independent of the main revenue of 3M, right? So then they can do whatever they want. So yeah. We allocate 10 to 20% of revenue, of budget constantly, because you may find a channel doesn't work today. Google changes the algorithm, it will work in like 24 hours or like next week, right? So you can never give up on the major channels. So I would say like allocate a tinkering budget that, experimental, so people can have fun with it, and try crazy things. Because I think the reason Dropbox you quoted and all these Airbnb discovered these things is because the culture allowed for it. If the culture doesn't allow for it, then it's only performance-based. Oh, one channel, let's just do that. Let's not do anything else. Then there is no room for creativity. Yeah.
And if you're too dependent on one channel and then something changes unexpectedly, just like Google with Penguin or Panda, like I know a lot of people who got hit really bad. But
yeah, and some of our clients are using Facebook ads for dating. So I don't know if you guys are affected, but in the US, it's a big, like dating sites have to go through a rigorous process on Facebook ads and Facebook. So suddenly this huge channel was shut off. Yeah, so I agree with you.
So you talked a little bit about the team, and one thing that I see here is that we don't have any growth. We don't have many growth hackers in Brazil as a professional. You know.
I'm here.
Yeah, you're here. Yeah. And also, by the way, Samir is doing a great job outsourcing that part of the business. So if anyone is interested, but back to the theme here. So let's say that we don't find anyone ready in the market here. How would you hire and train somebody to be a growth hacker?
So I mean, one thing is, like I was saying, you could outsource it to a firm like us. That's one option. Some things until your team catches up on it, right? And like we are also going to be doing training for people who say, oh, I want to keep this in-house. Like I don't want to give it to anybody else. So I think that those are the options. Is you'll have to train people, because even in the valley, there's not enough people. Like even where there's such a huge pool of talented people, this is such a hot commodity. Like the rest of the world doesn't even have people. So I would say maybe there's a few thousand people in the world who are that good, right? So I think training would be super important, and that's why I'm trying to do these workshops and like make something where you can send somebody who's smart, like who is kind of data aware, who knows modeling, a little bit of Excel, some basics, like who you feel, and then you have to train them. I think that's the only way. Hiring is very hard otherwise.
Is there any specific profile that worked better, like a very analytical person, or engineer, maybe? It has to be an engineer, or can have you seen it work with different type of people?
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, like there's so many data science classes offered, right? If they've taken a few classes like that, if they know pivot tables, advanced Excel, and they're acquainted. I think all these software that I talked about, the whole growth stack, it's easy to learn. Like you have to just know how to operate these machines. Once you know it, it's not that difficult. But I think the second part is just very, very eager to learn, like very excited to like try new things, and like we tried this LinkedIn thing. It's like 3-4 days, and we're like, let's just do this and make it happen, right? So I think the team has to be that way. So yeah, some computer science, some statistics, a little bit Excel, more analytical. Yeah, wanting to learn things. Yeah.
So marketing is becoming more engineering.
Yeah, as you're seeing, there's like backlogs, there's experimental, and it's becoming more science, right? Because now you have an objective, you have hypothesis testing, you have,
experiments.
All
yeah.
So experiments.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few tools in your presentation. What about resource, like different websites or things that people could look up to learn about growth hacking?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little bit new. There is a website, there's a training camp by one of my investors who's the co-founder of Match.com. He has something institute in the Valley called Tradecrafted, TRADECRAFTED.com. And it's like a training institute for it. We are putting together one institute next year as a part of our training program. And what else is a good ground? I will be posting, so with every tool and every skill set that I showed you, like statistics, mathematics, I'm going to add where they can learn that for free, like in Coursera or Udemy. So I'll be posting stuff on my Twitter, and I'll share it with you, and you can share it.
That's great. Also, growthhackers.com is also a good forum.
Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot about it. Yeah, Sean Ellis made it. And yeah, growthhackers.com is another one where the forum style, going back and forth and learning. Yeah, that's big.
Great.
Growth Hacker TV.
Growth Hacker TV.
Growth Hacker TV is a good one. And it's mostly interviews, but it's $99 a year. So, I mean, it's not I mean, you're not spending a huge lot, but it's still, there's some tactics in there. But yeah, again, there's not much out there, so he's doing a good job of putting everybody together. So.
All right. So what do you want to learn about Brazil? About the specifics of the market here?
Yeah, what I want to know is like, how are you finding inbound different? And, how I'm interested in learning, like some of the customers or some people you talk to and they were non-believers, but then they become believers. Like what made that change, and walk me through the resistance process and how it was overcome.
Wow. I think
you just gave me one question.
It really takes time. I mean, it takes time, and takes. I think it takes them to see another company in the same space doing that and making it work. So we have. So how much longer we have? 6 minutes. So okay, we're wrapping up here. Yeah, and but I think we see in our funnel like people taking 200 days to convert. 200, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Really, like, and I think it happens a lot in any B2B business. So, like, that's one of the good things about inbound is that you can attract and generate a lead, and you don't have to worry about closing the deal so fast because you're not spending money on it. You just keep nurturing them. Eventually, they become a customer.
And they may be in different parts of the funnel, right? Like everybody is not at the same point in the funnel, so
Exactly. But one thing that I would say is that it's very different here than in the US, is that not many people are doing this. So what happens is that if you take any vertical, any segment, and then you just start writing like good content, it doesn't have to be exceptional content. You just start writing good content. Very quickly, you can become an authority. You can start generating leads and traffic.
Not many people doing it.
Yeah, exactly. There's very little competition for most of the segments. So I'd say that's just low-hanging fruit for everyone else.
So how do you show ROI for this?
I'm sorry?
How do you show ROI, like in terms of using your tool and just using content in general? Like, what are the KPIs people should look at?
KPIs for us, for our customers, are basically sales. They have to close deals. So we can see that they start generating leads, and that's the first challenge that we face with them. So after they go through that phase, we start getting them to close deals, because that's the most sustainable way for us to grow with that customer. So after that, they see, okay, this machine is working, it's bringing me revenue. It's not a cost anymore, it's an investing. I can, keep spending and keep, bringing more leads, converting more customers. So basically, we're ROI is sales. So we see a lot of the collateral benefits of online content marketing in general, but we're pretty focused on bringing them sales, new revenue to the company.
And I think you decided, just advice for the audience here, like if they're starting from scratch, they have two options, right? One is to hire in-house staff to do content, which you have taken that option, right? Clearly. And to outsource to other tools or other providers. Like, what should they be thinking about, like pros and cons on how they should, like, how do you go about making a decision either way?
And you could do both as well. You could try to give them some scale by hiring.
Doing that.
Yeah, but what I would say is usually top of the funnel content's easier to outsource. Middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel content, more like a product content or let's say a solution content, like something like that's really harder to outsource. And also,
why is that?
Because you have to know a lot about the business, about the pains of your customers. So it's really hard to outsource that. And I think it's the role of a founder to know that, to really understand. You show the lean canvas there. It's the number one role of a founder to understand the business model, understand the segments and the unique value proposition, things like that. And also, I would say that usually when you try to segment your content a little bit, it's a good idea to outsource it. So let's say in our case, we have content we produce a lot of content internally, but we could basically outsource content towards the health market or the financial market. So we don't have to hire like thousands of people to write content inside. We can outsource that. But
are you outsourcing yourself or?
We did a little bit. Yeah, we tried some. We haven't, I know, got the habit of doing that frequently. But one thing that I would say is that for most companies, especially in the B2B space, the company has to be an authority in the space. So they have to create content for themselves, even if they outsource some. And also, we're getting this rise of video marketing, content in form of video. So you basically cannot outsource that. You have to like do hangout here, webinar there, presentation here. So that part of the content marketing engine, I think it's going to be on the company itself. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess what I'm hearing, guys, is like content marketing in the Brazil area is like such early stage, which is a great relief because in the US, everybody's pouring money, millions of dollars into content marketing. And it's such a great opportunity for you guys to take that market leadership role in whatever you want to do, whether you're a consultant or whether you're a big B2B company. There is space to be an expert. In the US, millions going, you know, every month into content. And it's so hard to differentiate and plan for a little guy. On top of it, you know, Google is changing its algorithms and authorship, and I mean, there's so much that you have to think about, at least in the US. So, yeah, you guys should definitely give it a shot. It looks like there's a lot of space to do some amazing things.
Thank you. I think we're done here, right? Yeah?
Q&A? Or?
So, any time for questions? 2 questions. Can't see anything from here.
Oh, there, in the back. Towards the left. There's one in the back. There's one in the back. Anybody else? Oh, there. Okay, 2. Got it.
One question. Let's say a recently launched startup in Brazil that's providing services B2C for customers, services as a customer, and it has only $1,000 budget per month. What would be your recommendation in going marketing digital?
Can you elaborate more on what service you provide?
B2C services like Conta Azul, let's take that as a reference, and has only $1,000. This is starting. What would be?
And do you have time?
Yes.
You have 4 hours per week, maybe?
Yes, absolutely.
Start writing content. You don't need money for that. Yeah. I would just maybe save that $1,000 just to do some experiments in paid media, but I would write content. Any tips from you?
Yeah, no, I think getting to producing great, unique content like is something I would focus on. And I mean, you can use those market maps that I showed you to figure out what's your, you know, how's your brand that's completely different. You know, what is the story you want to tell? What is the unique marketing message? And then your content strategy. So yeah, I mean, you know, start a content calendar, and whether you have 1,000 or 10,000, start shipping, basically. That's what I would say. Even small amounts, right? Because I think the right content can be amplified a lot, right? So even if you write, I mean, Paul Graham and a bunch of others, I mean, they write 1 essay per month or quarter, but look at how much distribution they get. So the good part is you are in a very, what do you call it? There's a lot of freedom, and it's a democratic process, right? If you're good, if you write good stuff, it will go viral, right? I mean, look at videos people are producing on YouTube, just normal people, and how viral it gets. So if you write something useful and unique, I think you can do a lot with a small budget. So I think there was a second question here on the right.
About metrics. What's your opinion about tools to measure the growth itself and learn about the metric to keep it growing based on the growth? metrics?
Growth metrics, yeah, growth metrics, I guess. Well, is it growth metrics? Is that right?
The best tool or method to measure the growth itself to keep growing?
I would say that you have to measure your business metrics first, not the Google Analytics metrics like page views or time on site or things like that. I would start by measuring, okay, how many leads is this content generating per month? What's my conversion rate from that to opportunities? If you're handing opportunities to the sales team or to yourself as a sales person, and how many of those opportunities are converting to customers. So that's basically the basic funnel, and then you start iterating and improving from that. That's how I would start. And then, of course, if you want to know exactly what's working and what's not working, you have to drill down a little bit and to find these different channels that are bringing those leads in the first place. What are the touch points that those leads have with your brand that are more related to the conversion in the end. But usually what I see people making the mistake of, trying to look at all the data and try to make sense of all of it. Just like, as you said, you have a lot of data puke, as you call, and it's really hard to, to figure out what's going on. It's just by looking at data. So you have to have a framework, and I like the funnel framework for that.
Yeah, and like the KR1, KR2, if any individual has a metric they need to improve, they'll be looking at the data from that lens, and then they will improve it because they have something to look. Otherwise, it's like a whole big puke, like I said. And I think another thing I would advise is, for example, once you have the basic metrics, which are, is important. There's no other escape. You have to get all the business metrics, right? So that's the first thing. And second is, you can get benchmark data. So for example, I guess forentrepreneurs.com has, for example, a SaaS benchmark that come every year, and you can rate your growth, quote unquote, growth metrics with what's the benchmark, and that may be a good way for you to keep check on whether my internal metrics are being consistent with, what should my churn rate be, LTV be, CAC be, like. So it'll give you some reference point to figure out where you're going, right, when you look at your own data. So I would look at, for B2C, there's some metrics that VCs publish. For B2C, and then for B2B, there's the SaaS. And for every business, there's some benchmark. So,
yeah, forentrepreneurs.com is a great website by Davis Koch, investor. He has a blog post called SaaS Metrics 2.0. I strongly recommend you reading it if you're in the B2B space, because it's basically the frame of reference for that. Ok, guys, thanks a lot. Muito obrigado, pessoal. Qualquer dúvida a mais, falamos aí ao longo da conferência. Valeu.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and thanks to Eric for inviting me from the Valley. So he's been a great host, and he and Antonio, one of my friends from runrun.it, are the ones who got me here. I'm really glad I made it here, and yeah, please reach out to me if I can help with anything that you need. You could follow me on Twitter, and I'll be publishing a lot more next year. I'm publishing a book also on growth. So thank you for your time.